Alto was a talentless bum who had no hopes of becoming a mage. However, everything changes when he accidentally summons a freaky demon lord that will teach him magic in exchange for sucking his mana from his sausage. It all starts when Alto's professor reveals that even though Alto got perfect scores in all courses, he can't advance to the next grade if he can't pass his summoning exam. At this, the professor gives Alto one more day to summon a familiar and says it will be his last chance to prove himself. Minutes later, he heads to the library, hoping to find inspiration, and suddenly gets smacked in the head by a prehistoric summoning book. He then decides to take it back, hoping it has the secret to fix his worthless magic. Later in his dorm, he carefully reads the instructions and draws a magic circle to try his luck one more time. When it suddenly starts glowing, he gets excited to finally see his first summon. Just then, he comes face to face with a plotful demon mommy named Vermeil. One look at her horns tells him that she is evil, but another look at her milky jugs tells him that she is everything he has been praying for.
Nice.
Vermeil notices this and immediately throws her jugs in his face, saying that she is ready to do whatever he wants. However, instead of ripping out little Johnny and clapping, he asks her to be his familiar, which creates a contract that binds her to him. When she realizes how potent his mana is, she suddenly locks lips with him to drain more of it. At this, she reveals that she's a demon and reminds him of her promise to do anything he wants, but Alto simply tells her to put on some clothes.
Come on, man.
Though she picks the most tempting outfit she can find. After joining him on the couch, Vermeil reveals he could only summon her because his mana is extremely powerful. Alto gets surprised to hear this since he could never do it before, so she explains that only a powerful demon like her can withstand such powerful mana, which is why he couldn't summon anyone before. Alto then asks why she formed a contract with him, and she says it's because he freed her from the book she was sealed in for centuries. When he asks why she was sealed, Vermeil hints that she did some pretty naughty things. The next day, Alto presents Vermeil as a human familiar, but the professor refuses to believe that's possible. However, after Vermeil plops her melons in his face to show him the contract tattoo, he gets shocked and says such a summoning has never happened. He then decides to pass Alto for the summoning exam and tells him to take a seat. Minutes later, the professor tells Vermeil to stop trying to ride Alto's pogo stick in class, but then she reminds him that the academy has always promoted the idea of students living close with their familiars. As the professor ultimately decides to let it slide, Alto's hot bestie Lilia, who has been fuming with jealousy this entire time, finally loses it and tells Vermeil to get off him. However, the professor sends her out of class for her outburst. After class, she tracks Alto down and demands to know what the deal is with Vermeil. Alto then recalls how Vermeil decided to hide her tail and horns last night because humans have been taught to hate demons for centuries. Thus, he tells Lilia that Vermeil is just his familiar, but she gets jealous and challenges him to a duel, proposing that the loser follow one command from the winner. After getting her mind under control, she summons Sylphide, her powerful wind spirit familiar. And as they prepare a deadly spell to attack Vermeil, Alto starts pissing his pants and hides behind Vermeil. She then tells him to have a little faith in her abilities and steps out to take the attack. After blasting her, Lilia gets excited to finally have Alto all to herself again. But after the dust settles, Vermeil walks towards her without a single scratch and overpowers her with fear. However, she uses her freaky power to make Lilia's water fountain erupt while the entire academy watches. After Vermeil and Alto win the duel, Lilia agrees to do whatever Alto wants, but instead of using that opportunity to give them both a taste of his rod, Alto tells Lilia to become friends with Vermeil.
Come on, man.
And she agrees with a handshake. Later in his room, Vermeil asks for a treat as her reward for winning the duel. And after a long makeout session, Alto asks why she even needs his mana. She explains that being sealed for so long made her weak, and his mana is the only reason she still has a physical form. The next moment, she offers to take mana from somewhere else if the kisses are too much, but the shy nerd turns down her demon throat. The following day, as they walk into campus, Alto tells Vermeil to stop drawing attention to herself because her massive chest racks have already dealt enough damage to his reputation. Just then, they see a high-level dragon charging in their direction, so Vermeil casually flicks it into orbit. Minutes later, in an auditorium, a professor welcomes them all to the second year. And as he explains the new curriculum, Alto tells Vermeil that casually sending a dragon into space is not a regular human activity, as he tries to suggest ways for her to avoid unnecessary attention. He realizes that every guy in the hall has been drooling over her melons this entire time. Much later, they start a class about demon seals, and while Vermeil drowns Alto in her plot cannons, Lilia struggles to keep her anger in check. After classes, they start walking to the dorm, and when Vermeil asks why Lilia is following them, Alto reminds them of the friendship pact they both agreed to. The next moment, a dragon rider named Rex shows up with his brother to talk about the dragon Vermeil yeeted into the sky because it was his familiar. As the hot-headed midget starts fuming about what Vermeil did, she starts messing with them and keeps them distracted until Alto uses a crystallization spell to freeze them both in place. After Vermeil commends him on being able to use such a powerful spell, Rex shatters the ice and summons a T-Rex from hell. Upon seeing this, Lilia tries to talk him down and asks why a fifth-year like is picking fights with second-year students he can obviously win. Rex ignores this and says he will only stop if Vermeil apologizes by throwing it back in his room. Upon hearing this, Alto walks up to protect his demon mommy, so Rex sends the overpowered Dino to attack him. Just then, Vermeil hugs Alto and releases the mana she took last night to increase his power level. The moment she releases him, his crystallization spell rips through the flaming Dino and almost pops Rex's head like a birthday piñata. Vermeil then uses her terrifying aura to make him lose bladder control, so he admits defeat and apologizes for picking on them. Alto then heads to his room with Vermeil and explains that situations like this are why she has to stop attracting attention to herself. After agreeing with him, Vermeil asks why he is even enduring the torture of being a student and offers to give him all the money he wants, but he turns down the offer. She then asks what he plans to achieve in life, and after giving it some thought, he says he wants to be a great mage and explains how mages are split into 4 ranks: gold, silver, bronze, and apprentice squares. Despite the fact that even the best students end up as bronze squares, he plans to surpass even the gold square mages and become a platinum mage recognized by the kingdom for his contribution to science. The next day, Lilia notices how tired Alto looks and says she already knows that Vermeil was draining his magnum throughout the night. Just then, 2 students named Marks and Cheryl show up, and when Marks suddenly starts twirling Alto and praises him for defeating Rex, Vermeil asks Lilia who the dancing clown is. After Alto explains that he is from a noble family, a teacher tells Alto to take Lilia and Cheryl to a meeting with the principal. Minutes later, the principal says he has to select a second-year representative from 3 of them, and after Vermeil excitedly tells Alto that it's a step towards achieving his dream, the principal further explains that they have to compete in a trial to decide who gets the role. Much later, they arrive in a magical forest to find an ultra-rare fairy flower, and when Marks asks why the principal left him out, Cheryl says it's probably because he is mentally the same as Patrick Star. Despite this, he insists on joining them and runs into the forest to find the flower, only to end up halfway inside a monster plant. After they find him, Shirley stays back to save him, so Alto continues the quest with Vermeil and Lilia. Minutes later, they find the flower, but also spot 3 Cerberus guarding it. Lilia then pulls out an invisibility potion, and when Alto asks why she has such a high-level potion, she almost admits that she planned to sneak into his room for a late-night workout. After noticing that the Cerberus is too sick to pick up her scent, she drinks it and starts taking off her uniform. So Alto looks away, like that changes anything. As she slowly sneaks past the Cerberus, Vermeil reminds Alto that he should be competing against her, not enjoying the show. He then asks if she can amplify his mana like she did yesterday, but she tells him that defeating Cerebrus is actually easy. However, she will still need some mana to succeed, so she pushes him down and starts sucking, while Lilia realizes that one of the Cerberus heads can smell just fine the moment it notices and tries to attack. Alto uses a flame spell to distract it, and as it charges towards him, Lilia takes the opportunity to run towards the flower. Just then, Vermeil unleashes a powerful demon art that sends the Cerberus to the underworld. And after she commends Alto on still having enough stamina to fight, Lilia returns with the flower. She tells Alto to take it since he basically saved her life, but then her potion wears off, giving him a full front view of her kitty.
Nice.
Embarrassed, she accidentally lets go of the flower, and the wind carries it all the way to Cheryl, who just managed to save Marks from the monster plant. Hours later, at the academy, she asks if they are really okay with her getting the role, and after they all agree to let her have it, Lilia promises to win the next challenge fair and square, The next day, Vermeil tries her first crepe and loses her mind over how good it tastes. Alto initially gets surprised by this, but after she says it didn't exist in her time, he remembers that she was trapped in the book for centuries and wonders why he never thought to ask about what life looked like for her back then. Just as he tries to ask her a couple of questions, they notice a squad of dragon riders entering campus airspace with their fire-breathing beasts. While the other students gush over how good Captain Chris looks, Vermeil asks Alto what he wanted to talk about, but he changes his mind and offers to give her more treats next time. She then decides to share the rest of the crepe with him. After, they meet up with Lilia and Marx, who have also been yapping about Captain Chris and how amazing she is. Lilia then reminds him that Rex is also a dragon rider and says they are all probably like him, but Marx insists that Chris is different because she started the dragon riders all on her own. He further states that she is one of 7 gold square mages in the academy and also happens to be an executive officer in the student council. Upon hearing this, Alto gets excited because he always thought it was next to impossible to reach gold square status while being an active student. While he joins Marx to talk about how amazing Chris is, Lilia tells Vermeil that all 5 members of the council are gold square mages, which makes them a powerful squad feared by even the academy professors. When Alto says he can't wait to get that strong, Vermeil drops her massive jugs on his face and says he can definitely achieve it. But Lilia immediately pushes her back and gives her a lecture about public indecency. Afterwards, she joins Cheryl in the changing room and complains about Vermeil's crazy behavior before taking a look at Cheryl and realizing that she has been hiding her plump peach under her uniform this entire time. After giving her a compliment, she continues yapping about how Vermeil definitely has evil intentions because even gold square mages are not powerful enough to defeat a Cerebrus as easily as she did the other day. When Cheryl suddenly asks if she likes Alto, she completely denies it and claims she is just looking out for him because they have known each other for years. Shirley then tells her to act fast because he might start getting attached to Vermeil. Right then, Lilia realizes that Vermeil never followed them into the changing room, and while they start looking for her, Alto and the other guys get traumatized because Vermeil has been waiting to see Alto's pants drop this entire time. Minutes later, he asks why she followed him into the guys' changing room. And after she says no one would let her change in the hallway, Lilia jumps in and asks if she was too stupid to realize that there would obviously be a changing room for girls. Just as Alto reminds her to stop drawing attention to herself, the student council shows up. So they all step to the side. But while everyone else watches in awe, Vermeil locks eyes with Chris, who then senses something off about her. Hours later, Alto hops in the shower and continues talking about how powerful they all looked, and when Vermeil says she also sensed it, he agrees. The next moment, he realizes that she shouldn't be in the shower with him and tries to escape, but she pins him to the wall and reminds him that they need to get freaky every day to make sure he achieves his dreams. Around the same time, Chris turns bad boy Rex into her personal sandbag and calls him a worthless coward for losing to a second year despite all his big talk about having a dinosaur familiar. As she continues cussing him out and says his dinosaur is more worthless than the ones in museums, he tries to snap back, but she fractures his face with a nasty kick that leaves him bleeding all over the floor. After seeing some blood on her boot, she orders him to lick it off as punishment for his incompetence, but he refuses and says Vermeil was right about how arrogant the council members are. He then decides to quit, so Chris sends him packing with another gut-wrenching kick before deciding to see what Alto is all about. The next day, Alto rushes to the infirmary to see Rex because the whole school is talking about how Chris treated him like a bottom-barrel peasant. When he asks what happened, Rex's brother tries to tell them, but Rex stops him and asks Alto what he thinks about dinosaurs. Alto then says he has always thought they were cool, so Rex tells him to leave, saying he has nothing to do with his injuries. However, just a couple of minutes later, Lilia tries to stop Alto from heading to the duel ring and reminds him that they are meant to be avoiding unnecessary attention. Despite this, Alto still takes Vermeil to challenge Chris, and as soon as they lock eyes, she gives him a chance to turn back. Naturally, he refuses, so she commends his bravery before promising to teach him some manners. After she summons her dragon, Vermeil pulls Alto in for a kiss and activates his golden mana. As they start throwing powerful attacks at each other, Rex's brother rushes to the infirmary to tell him about the duel. Minutes later, Chris blocks another wave of attacks from Alto and admits that he is way more advanced than the average second-year student. But her main concern is the fact that Vermeil has been blocking her blasts without any barrier or protective magic. After she unleashes a sizzling combo that drops Vermeil to her knees, Alto gets scared and tries to face Chris on his own. But Vermeil stops him and says he just needs to focus on generating more mana. After he finally does, they combine their powers to blast Chris with an unavoidable crystal spell. Once the dust settles, Alto gets excited because Chris's part of the ring got destroyed by the blast, which means she definitely got hit. However, she resurfaces with her dragon and says their mistake was focusing all their attacks on her alone. She then unleashes an endless rain of fireballs and yaps about how worthless they all are compared to her. Despite this, Alto dodges the blasts and says she is wrong for looking down on everyone else, so she tells him to change her mind by winning the duel. Vermeil then agrees that it's the only way to get it through Chris's thick skull. So they both combine their powers again and activate an even stronger form of Alto's golden mana. Using this, they shoot a large crystal towards Chris, but she easily uses a fireball to destroy it and calls them stupid for using the same attack twice. The next moment, she realizes that they vanished during the explosion and gets horrified to see them right behind her with a crystal prepped for another attack. Around the same time, Rex tells his brother to stop talking about the duel already because Alto is still too weak to defeat someone as powerful as Chris. Just then, Alto holds the crystal to Chris's neck, and the entire academy erupts in praise because no regular student has ever won against a member of the student council. Minutes later, chicks Alto has never seen before surround him and start asking him a bunch of questions like they are his day one fans. Upon seeing this, Lilia loses it and tries to bash their heads in with a rock because they all used to call him an overachieving midget while she was the only one who saw his potential. Just as Alto begs her to drop the rock, a professor named Obsidian shows up to ask about the duel, but all the Alto's new fans rush over to him and explain what happened. He then commends Alto on achieving the impossible before also warning him about getting into such duels because only God knows what Chris would have subjected him to if they lost. After commending him again, he leaves with a loyal squad of freaked out hotties, and when Lilia notes that he is always surrounded by chicks, Alto asks if she is also into him. While she strangles him for asking such a question, Rex finds Chris sweeping and asks why she is doing such. She then tells him that being the captain of the Dragon Riders doesn't mean she gets to avoid punishment for losing. After she apologizes for kicking him around like a rag doll, he takes the brush and says it's cool since she no longer thinks she is better than everyone else. Later that night, Vermeil wakes Alto up with a kiss, and after turning on the lights, he tells her to stop interrupting his bedtime for her unholy desires. But she says they have to do it tonight because she lost a lot of mana during the fight. When he still resists, she asks if he no longer likes her kisses, but he explains that she shouldn't be kissing someone so regularly unless she is in love with them. The next moment, she pulls him close and whispers that she is actually in love with him and sends shivers down his spine before pouncing for the usual clap session. The following day, Lilia notices how refreshed she looks and asks why, but Vermeil skips to details to avoid another mental episode. Alto, on the other hand, continues obsessing over what she said and suddenly runs to the library to ask Obsidian if demons can fall in love with humans. After taking a moment to think, he explains that the only record of human and demon romance was cases where a succubus got attached, but since they mostly feed on mana, he tells Alto that it was probably just their way of using any human stupid enough to fall in love with them. Hours later, Alto joins Vermeil for dinner, but after minutes of stuffing her face, she notices that he hasn't eaten a single thing and asks if he is okay. She then tries to eat some of his food, but he stops her and gathers some courage before asking if she is only using. After suddenly hugging him, she asks why this is bothering him, so he reminds her that literally all she does is take mana whenever she gets the chance. She then explains how important mana is for her survival, and suddenly kisses him. This time, though, he notices that she didn't take any mana, and after saying that it's proof of her love, she hugs him and asks for a kiss, but he refuses. The next day, Lilia notices the same glow on Vermeil's face and wonders if she uses Alto's special milk as skincare. Alto then sees Obsidian heading out and runs over to thank him for the talk they had yesterday. After saying that he will always be glad to help a student, Obsidian asks why he was suddenly interested in demon romance, but Alto claims he was just curious and wanted to ask someone about it. Obsidian then says all women are like feisty demons, in a foolish attempt to sound cool, but Alto stares back in confusion, wondering how chicks fall for such a goofy cornball. Much later, a chick named Emma enters Obsidian's office and asks why he summoned her, so he says she has to help him with something important, while getting suspiciously close to her. When she suddenly hugs him and confesses her feelings, he claims to love her as well, while holding a needle loaded with a mysterious solution. Hours later, Emma lies unconscious in her room and slowly turns into a human popsicle. Afterwards, news of her condition spreads across campus and eventually reaches Vice President Ruga, who remains completely calm and says it's the 4th time a student has been found in a comatose state this year alone. After handing over Emma's details, Dueling Committee Chair Jessica explains how 5 students had to break into her room because of how strong the ice wall had grown. Ruga then says it should be impossible for a silver square like Emma to produce the mana necessary for such a high-level ice spell. After Jessica tells him that the council president has been troubled since she heard the news, he promises to look into it. Meanwhile, Alto has just started measuring Vermeil's height, and when she asks why he even has a measuring tape, he says he uses it to check his height every day. She then tries to slowly break the bad news that he will always be a midget, but he refuses to hear another word and starts regretting that he has to make a report. Earlier on, a teacher told them all to make reports describing their familiars in detail, and while he was immediately horrified by the thought of it, Vermeil was excited to get back inside so they could start. After writing her height down, he decides to focus on regular stuff like her hobbies, but she tosses her dress and places his hands on her melons so he can get an exact measurement. While he tries to stop her from teasing him, Sylphide watches the entire thing from his window. After Sylphide returns with all the juicy deets, Lilia flips out and tosses her clothes before drinking the invisibility potion and sneaking into the dorm. Just as she enters the room, Alto grabs a book from the shelf, not knowing that Lilia's melons are right in front of him. After he finishes with a report, they head out to shop. Meanwhile, Chris and her dragon take another beating from Rex, who seems to have finally gone off the deep end. Years ago, Rex summoned a massive egg and got excited because he was convinced that it was a dragon and would help him achieve his lifelong dream of joining the Dragon Riders. As he picked it up to start the incubation process, Chris noticed and started admiring the egg. Rex could barely believe his eyes back then, since Chris was already well known as a genius prodigy. Back in the present, Alto and Vermeil have just finished shopping, but then she asks him to buy her some dessert. So he checks his wallet for some money and says they can't get any because he just went broke. Upon hearing this, Vermeil refuses to leave and starts pouting while he tries to convince her. Eventually, he decides to get her a little something, and she immediately thanks him by dropping her massive melons on his face. Just as he tries to pull away, she kisses him in front of everyone, so he pushes and tells her to stop. She then says she is only doing it because she loves him, but he insists that it's not the right time or place. Vermeil then thinks he wants her to take some mana and continues kissing him until Rex's brother shows up and begs them for help. By then, Chris has just managed to get some space from Rex, and after seeing the mutations growing out of his body, she tries to stop him with a fireball, but he walks right through and continues kicking her around like she did to him the other day. After shattering her ribs with a brutal uppercut, he gets even more upset and says he expected to feel better after beating her up. While stomping on her face, he tells her to get up and fight like she always does. But after he picks her up, she starts begging him to stop. Just then, his brother returns with Alto and Vermeil, so he tosses Chris over to them and says he has been waiting to make them pay as well. Alto quickly tries to check on Chris, but she tells him to run and save himself. However, the sight of her injuries causes him to lose it, so he asks if Rex is the one responsible. Rex then asks if he left his brain in the dorm because he is obviously the only one here. But when Alto looks back at him with anger, Rex loses it and becomes even more enraged than before. As his mutation spreads, Vermeil recognizes it, but then he summons his dinosaur to attack them, so she tries to help Alto. All of a sudden, they hear a female voice telling everyone to stop and watch in shock as the council president speeds towards Rex and slices right through his mutation in a matter of seconds. While he squirms in pain, Elena walks over to Chris and helps her up before saying that she should be ashamed for losing to a weak loser and his mutated lizard. Upon hearing this, Alto tells her to save the insults for later, but then Chris gets back up, saying he is not done fighting. However, the exhaustion catches up to him. But after he passes out, Chris surprisingly runs over to check on him. Elena then uses that opportunity to ask Vermeil if she knows anything about what just happened to Rex, but she acts oblivious. 3 days later, Rex remains unconscious in the infirmary, so the council holds another meeting to discuss what happened. Ruga reminds them of all the recent incidents and says the same person is behind all of them, but Chris suddenly gets fed up and storms out. Jessica fails to stop her and wonders why she is acting up. So Ruuga reminds them that she hates it when someone else plays with her toys. Around the same time, Alto gets a notice for the upcoming bronze certificate exams. But while Lilia is excited, he gets lost in thought. She notices this and snaps him back to reality before telling him that stressing over what happened to Rex won't solve anything. She further states that Rex will blame himself if Alto fails the exams, so Alto decides to focus. Just then, Vermel says she wants to head back to their room, so he asks if she is okay, and she assures him that everything is fine. However, after she leaves, he remains concerned and tells Lilia that she has never wanted to leave his side before. Lilia then tells him not to worry since she can obviously take care of herself. But Alto recalls that she has been acting strangely ever since the incident with Rex. The next moment, Lilia grabs his shoulder and suggests having a private study session in her room while barely holding on to her sanity. Minutes later, Vermel runs into Obsidian behind the school building, and as he starts asking about Alto, she tells him to drop the act because she already knows he is the one behind everything. He immediately tries to act dumb until she tells him to be careful with the low-tier demon he has been working with because humans have no business with such power. As she walks off, he asks if she will tell anyone about his schemes, but she says she doesn't care as long as he leaves Alto out of it. After sensing her terrifying aura and realizing that she is the real deal, he admits that his demon is actually low tier, but as soon as she turns to leave, he uses the demon to distract her and injects his solution into her neck. While she starts losing control of her abilities, Lilia desperately shoves her milkers into Alto's face and tries to make him strip, claiming that they need it to focus better. As he tries to stop her, his contract insignia suddenly starts glowing, causing him to realize that something is going on with Vermel. At that moment, a powerful wave of mana sweeps through the academy, and after everyone senses it, Alto and Elena rush out to find the source. Elena uses her speed to get there and immediately slices Obsidian's demon in half, but it reattaches and starts duplicating before revealing its true form to stop her. By then, Vermel has completely transformed into a rampaging monster, and as Obsidian gushes over how incredible she looks, she destroys a huge chunk of the forest with one swing of her hand. Shocked by how powerful she is, Obsidian activates a demonic power to capture her just as Alto and Lilia finally show up. He also gets shocked to see Vermel in such a monstrous form, and takes a moment to wrap his head around it before they both ask Obsidian if he knows what is going on. The unhinged Psycho looks back with a smile and shows Alto that he now has full control of Vermel, but Alto still struggles to understand how he is connected to Vermel's current state. Obsidian then admits that he is responsible and explains how he spent years trying to perfect his solution. The 5 students who recently ended up in comatose states were all his lab rats, as he needed live subjects to perfect the formula. After further explaining how the solution causes their latent powers to go AWOL, he tells Alto to enjoy the show since Vermel is now his pet. At that moment, Alto completely loses it and releases a powerful blast of mana, which excites Obsidian until he sees that Vermel is also reacting to it. When she snaps the chains and grows even more powerful, he nearly wets himself as he never expected her to get stronger. The next moment, she charges towards him, but Alto suddenly jumps in and gets stabbed right through the heart by her massive claws. While Lilia freezes in shock at the sight, Vermel's soul falls deeper into the dark abyss of her mind as her demonic nature takes over. However, Alto's blood helps her regain her sanity, but by then it's already too late. Seeing him bleeding out, her tears turn to blood, and she suddenly sprouts wings, eager to rip Obsidian to shreds, but Alto hugs her and tells her to stop. As her anger subsides, she asks why he jumped, and after saying that it was just instinct, he passes out. Lilia then struggles to hold back her tears and refuses to believe that he is actually dead, but then Vermel promises to save him and uses a kiss to transfer golden mana into his body. After she successfully heals him, Obsidian's brain cells implode because he never thought it was possible for a demon to have such power. In a desperate attempt to prove that he is still superior, he injects himself with the formula and transforms into a demon hybrid with enough eyes to see Pluto. He then starts yapping about how powerful he is while Vermel calmly watches and waits for an attack. When he finally tries to fight, she obliterates half his entire body with a single punch. So the mutated monkey starts fighting to escape his own body. He eventually manages to pull free and takes off into the clouds, only to get torched by a massive fireball from Chris. He immediately tries to fly the other way, but Vermel catches up and uses another deadly punch to send him crashing into what's left of his mutant body. Fortunately for him, Vermeil decides to honor Alto's wish by sparing his life. Just then, Alto wakes up. So Lilia runs into his arms and starts crying while he looks around and wonders why Vermeil has not come to check on him. Meanwhile, Elena has just finished off the demon supporting Obsidian, but before vanishing, it promises to fight her again. Hour later, Alto finds Vermeil and assures her that he is perfectly fine. But she tells him that it's not that simple because he needs her mana inside him. He gets confused by this and reminds her that he would have been dead if she hadn't saved him. But she says he isn't exactly alive either. She further explains that her mana is the only reason his heart still beats, and since it is basically her life force, they are now intertwined, meaning that they will both cease to exist the moment something happens to one of them. Upon hearing this, Alto realizes what the problem is and asks why she saved him, because she now has the same lifespan as him. The next day, Obsidian gets sent to jail, and Rex, as well as the other affected students, finally wake up from the coma. Meanwhile, Alto is now the one who needs kisses from Mana, but for some reason, Vermeil no longer wants to spend time with him after they make out. When he asks why she is being so distant, she says it's because staying with her is what led to his current situation. She also reminds him of her terrifying true form, and when he claims not to care, she says it's for his own good, but promises to give him mana for as long as he needs. She then decides to go find another book to hide in, but he gets pissed off by this and suddenly kisses her. After pulling away, she realizes that he didn't take any mana and gets confused. He then pins her against the wall and says she has to stay with him forever because he can never be afraid of her. Seeing him be so assertive, she agrees, but then he loses his manliness and runs off. She then remembers when he said that real kisses are only for the people you truly love. Later that night, Vermeil watches over Alto as he sleeps and reminisces on what he said. She then tries to get a kiss, but then he starts calling her name, which causes her to blush. Days later, in class, Alto is surprised to see all the girls crying over Obsidian because learning about his crimes was apparently not enough to make them hate him. On the other hand, the guys in class are also crying, but it's because they haven't seen Vermeil's demon melons in class recently. When they ask Alto why he stopped bringing her to class, he claims she just needs to rest for a while. While he starts to consider getting her some of her favorite treats, Lilia finds at the city's outskirts and confronts her about hiding her true identity. After Vermeil apologizes for lying about it, Lilia says it doesn't actually matter what she is as long as she has good intentions. She then asks Vermeil if she has tried to pull anything suspicious with Alto, and after thinking about it, Vermeil tells her about the kiss. Surprisingly, Lilia manages to contain her anger, and when Vermeil asks if she is now scared to be around her, Lilia once again says that it doesn't matter. She also promises that Alto will be there to help if she ever loses control again. Much later, Alto returns to his room with snacks for Vermeil, but she hasn't returned yet, so he gets worried. Just then, she walks in looking happier than ever before and finally admits that she still wants to be with him. Upon hearing this, Alto expresses relief and says he was worried that his sudden outburst the other night had scared her away for good. After taking her hand and promising to be the best master she has ever had, he asks if she wants anything and tries to show her the snacks he bought. However, she stops him and says she wants a different kind of treat. Before he can even ask, she kisses him, and he returns the energy with an even stronger kiss. The next day, Vermeil decides to return to class with Alto, but he stops her from leaving because her milkers are too big for the uniform. After recalling how he had to beg a professor for covers the last time they had a wardrobe malfunction, he decides to put up with it since it's way too late to get her another uniform. Around the same time, two platinum mages named Helios and Iolite had just taken down a group of monks in a magic temple. Iolite then expresses his disappointment in Obsidian for failing them after all the effort put into his research. After Helios notes that his research did help them learn a few things, Iolite insists that he was never going to reach their level. Just then, the last surviving monk charges in for a sneak attack, but foolishly screams at the last moment, so they yeet him into a pillar before heading out. Back in the academy, all the boys in class celebrate Vermeil's return, but after they throw Alto for a couple of minutes, he spots another group of creeps crying and learns that they all preferred the mini dress she usually wears. Just then, one of the guys, who hasn't completely lost his senses to Vermeil's cakes, admits that they are all just glad to see them back together, especially because the bronze certificate exams are almost here. After Alto decides to lock in for the exams, Vermeil takes him to a dark corner for a quick makeout session. but he pushes back and says it's the wrong time to get freaky. She then unlocks her only surviving button and melts the rest of his brain with her sweet words before kissing him again. Minutes later, they get back to class and suddenly notice that everyone seems to be on edge for some reason. The next moment, Ryuga walks in with Elena and apologizes for interrupting their class before promising to get straight to the point. Elena then walks over to Alto and asks to speak with him and Vermeil. Minutes later, they both enter the council office, and Alto immediately decides to get his guard up just in case they know what Vermeil really is. Elena then apologizes for the injuries he suffered while fighting Obsidian and says they are responsible for not stopping him earlier. She further explains that they intended to interrogate him and figure out who funded his research, but he apparently escaped from prison last night. Since they both fought him, she asks for any information they might and Alto easily agrees to help, thinking that it's all she wants. When Elena suddenly switches up and demands to know if he is hiding anything, Jessica pulls her sword to his neck while Ryuga activates a deadly collar around Vermeil's neck. She easily destroys some of it and says it can't stop her, but Ryuga says it will slow her down enough for Jessica to chop Alto's head off. Elena then repeats her question, so Alto tries to lie, but Vermeil gives him the signal to come clean. After reluctantly telling them everything, he assures them that Vermeil is good and even says he will gladly accept expulsion if they don't want her. Vermeil tries to stop him, but he insists on protecting her and says he is ready to fight them all if they even think of harming her. Surprisingly, Elena says she has no problems with Vermeil being a demon. In fact, she plans to use it to their advantage, and Ryuga agrees that they need every advantage since Obsidian's actions prove that even trusted professors can be plotting against them. Jessica refuses to trust Vermeil, so Elena tells her not to worry since they can easily chop off Alto's head the moment she tries anything suspicious. When Vermeil asks Elena for her plans, she claims not to have any special plans and tells them to go about their lives as usual. The next moment, she asks Alto if he would like to join the council as its latest executive. Shocked, Alto asks if she is just looking for a way to keep a close eye on him, and after saying that, he can choose to see if that way. Elena explains that he actually deserves a spot because he defeated Chris, who is among the top 5 strongest students in the entire academy. She also states that what happened with Obsidian further proved that he and Vermeil could become valuable team members dedicated to keeping the academy safe. After Lilia and the others hear about it, Lilia asks how on earth he pulled off the impossible, so Alto says that Elena simply decides to acknowledge his potential. He then recalls Elena told him to keep the real reason secret before Marks starts twirling him around to celebrate because he is the first second-year student to join the council. After Cheryl says that it actually makes sense, considering how strong he is, Lilia congratulates him again. Much later, they return to the dorm, and when Vermeil asks Alto why he still looks concerned, he says it feels like they were forced to join the council because she was exposed. Vermeil then says she doesn't actually care about being exposed, but warns him to be careful around Elena because she looked like she was ready to attack if he rejected the offer to join the council. Alto then says that none of this would have happened if he were strong enough to defeat Obsidian and stop her identity from ever getting exposed. After he promises to continue training and eventually get strong enough to keep her safe, Vermeil removes her plot armor so they can get started with the usual workout. While they continue loving each other, Elena finishes up a prayer at the chapel and casually chops off a statue's head to express how excited she is to have a powerful demon on the council. After, Alto starts heading to the council office with Vermeil, and after promising to become the strongest in the entire academy one day, he opens the door and sees more melons than his virgin eyes can handle.
Beautiful!
Minutes later, Jessica punishes him and tells Elena to reconsider letting a fun-sized creep join the council, but Elena says it was their fault for not locking the door. When Jessica says it's wrong for a guy to see their plots before marriage, Elena and Chris realize that her brain is stuck in the Stone Age. After getting past Jessica's episode, Elena shows them a paper golem she took from the Obsidian incident and says it was made using complex magical structures they have never seen before. Chris then takes a look at it and agrees with her, but after Elena says that their researchers claimed it was a completely new type of magic, they all freeze in shock because only platinum mages can create new forms of magic. While they come to terms with the fact that their enemy is literally at the top of the magic food chain, Iolite and Helios return to their base and see Kohakumiya, the platinum mage who created the paper golem. After they tell her about the mission and mention running into a stubborn old priest, Kohakumiya asks if they managed to get the priest on their side because he could become a major asset. but Iolite calmly said he sent the priest to be with God in heaven. He then walks past her to look at a massive creature in a tank before telling Helios that they need to leave and get to take Alto and Vermeil. Hours later, Alto experiences a dream where he sees a little Vermeil in a destroyed city. As he tries to help her, he gets transported to a weird-looking room where a phantom lady suddenly asks about his feelings for the special girl. He gets confused and asks who she is talking about. So she tells him that he will soon have to choose between saving the world by fighting for justice or letting everything burn by choosing her. This causes him to realize that she is talking about Vermeil, but as he tries to ask for more details, she grabs his face and repeats her question before he wakes up. Much later, Vermeil wakes up and sees him studying, so she tells him to come back to bed and says he doesn't need to study anymore. He then explains how Chris and the others in the council basically told him to make sure he dominates everyone in school because the latest council member cannot be a weakling. After recalling that the test has a practical session to test their skill, she pulls Alto into bed for a long makeout session and claims she is only doing it to make him stronger.
I'm gonna come.
The next day, Alto finds the book Vermeil got sealed in and wonders why a mage would seal her away for so long. After trying to read it and realizing that the language is much too advanced for him, he places it in his bag and heads out for the test. After they all arrive at the location for the test while walking towards the building, Lilia notices that students from other schools have been glaring at them menacingly. Confused, she asks why. So Cheryl reminds her that their academy is the top magic academy in the nation, and while half of their students easily scale through the exams, only a small percentage of students from other schools get to take the exams. Once they all get inside the building, an instructor shows up to begin the test, and Cheryl recognizes him as Colonel Pharynx, a demonic mage who usually handles high-profile cases. With the help of his assistants, he introduces him to a giant crystal orb with a small flame at its core and explains that they only have to channel mana into the flame to pass. Upon hearing this, all the students get excited, thinking this will be the easiest test they have ever done. But Alto can already tell that there is a lot more to it. As the test begins, different students from a bunch of other academies take turns proving how useless their schools are by failing to induce even the smallest spark in the flame. Eventually, Pharynx calls Lilia for her turn, and she excitedly walks over to the crystal and figures out why everyone else failed. They were all too focused on forcing their mana through the crystal when they should have directed it directly to the flame. After summoning Sylphide, she channels enough mana to light up the entire crystal, and Pharynx notes that she has the highest score so far, so she returns to Alto and the others to celebrate. Just then, a student from a rival academy steps up and promises to show everyone that his academy is the best. Shockingly, he actually manages to light up the crystal, but instead of feeling challenged, Lilia and the others get excited to finally have worthy competition. Shirley goes up next, and after she also lights up the crystal, Marks heads up for his turn and barely manages to scare through. While they all celebrate, Pharynx admits to feeling a little disappointed because the academy students usually put on a much greater show during tests. After assessing the students left, he finally summons Alto to take his turn. So Alto walks up to the crystal with Vermeil. Upon seeing this, the other students make fun of him for bringing his mommy to the test, and the assistant also insists that it's wrong for him to have help. But Pharynx stops her because he already got a special note from the academy explaining who Vermeil is to Alto. Alto then walks to the crystal and takes a closer look at it before realizing that it's some sort of magic contraption that redirects the flow of mana depending on where a mage pours the mana from. After walking to the back, he finds the perfect spot to channel mana and asks Pharynx if he can hit it from the back. Pharynx agrees and gets shocked because Alto is the only one who has realized that the real test is a combination of mana control and magic perception. However, just as Alto tries to pour his mana into the crystal, Vermeil tells him it's the wrong spot. He then walks over to the most difficult part of the crystal and recalls his promise to become the strongest mage the world has ever seen. Pharynx gets surprised by the sudden choice, but then Alto fires up the crystal and changes the color of the flame. As everyone watches in shock, Vermeil tells him to go even harder and scare them all with his true power. So he decides to go all out and ends up shattering the crystal. He immediately starts apologizing to Pharynx and asks if he failed, but Pharynx says he passed with flying colors. He also warns Alto not to get cocky since they still have the written exam. And after Alto leaves, he thinks to himself that even a platinum mage would struggle to pull off what he just did. After Alto and the girls find a spot to sit for lunch, And while eating, Lilia asks if they know anyone who has passed the written test perfectly. Shirley then tells them that there has only ever been one person who achieved that, and this causes Alto to get a little concerned. But Vermeil tells him to stop stressing over the little things because he will definitely pass without any problems. After Lilia suggests that they focus on doing their best, they all head inside to prepare for the exam. But Vermeil takes Alto to her favorite corner for a quick makeout session, after he stops and says he doesn't need mana for the test.
Come on, man.
She tells him to stop acting like he doesn't want it, so he drops the act and continues kissing her. Afterwards, he rushes to the exam hall and runs past the grumpy rival student from before, who then heads to the men's room to continue cussing out Alto and the girls. Just then, Iolite appears behind him, so he tries to leave, only to see his insides suddenly leaking out from a split-second attack Iolite used. After he passes out, Iolite grabs his card to access the exam hall. Meanwhile, Jessica and Elena have just finished a light sparring session, so they head to the washroom to clean up. Jessica then uses that opportunity to tell Elena how she was always scared of demons growing up before asking if it was really the right move to trust Vermeil. After Elena says they have no choice but to trust that such a miracle is possible, Jessica asks why Alto would even accept a demon's heart, and Elena replies that it's because he is in love with her. By then, Alto has just gotten to the exam venue, and after asking Vermeil to spend some time elsewhere, he heads to his seat and wonders why the person next to him hasn't shown up. The next moment, Iolite walks in and sits beside him before saying hi. As the exam starts, Vermeil sits at a bench outside and overhears two students talking about how the written exams are often more difficult than the practical ones. She initially gets concerned, but shrugs it off after recalling how Alto spent countless nights preparing for the exams. She then wonders why he always pushes himself so hard. And after thinking back on the promise he made to protect her, she blushes, realizing that he is doing all this to keep her safe. Back in the exam hall, Alto has just finished reading through the questions and is now sure that he won't have any problems. But just before starting, he looks over at Iolite and is shocked to see him fast asleep. He gets convinced that the weirdly dressed psycho probably overdosed on shrooms and starts writing down his answers. However, over an hour later, he checks the time to be sure he still has enough time and notices Iolite finally waking up. Alto then wonders why he even bothered showing up, because there is no way he can still write all the answers. But Iolite suddenly puts his brain on overdrive and quickly writes all the answers correctly. After carelessly throwing his sheets, he takes a look at Alto's papers and tries to give him tips to write faster. Just then, the teacher tells them to stop talking, so Alto apologizes and tells Iolite to chill out. Iolite then says it doesn't matter since none of them will be finishing the exam. But this confuses Alto. The next moment, another teacher barges in and tells the first guy to stop the exam because they just found a student's corpse in the bathroom. Confused, the teacher tells him that everyone is already in the hall, but then he locks eyes with Iolite and realizes that he is an imposter. The next moment, the ground gets destroyed as a rock golem emerges under Iolite's control. While everyone scrambles to find safety, Iolite calls Alto the Demon Master to show that he knows about his relationship with Vermeil. As he tries to attack, a magic knight shows up and activates his powers to hold back the golem, but it smashes his arm in an instant. Iolite then makes the golem pick him up for one final attack, but Pharynx charges in and destroys the golem's arm with a kick. After Vermeil also jumps in and hits the golem with a mana-infused fireball, Iolite commends Pharynx on being strong enough to break his golem. Pharynx then recognizes him as the youngest ever Platinum Mage. And hearing this causes Alto to remember when Shirley said that only one person has ever passed every written exam with ease. Realizing that it was Iolite, he freezes in shock and watches while Lilia tries to fight her way into the hall to help him, as the soldiers stop her from entering. Pharynx asks Iolite why he isn't taking any hostages, so Iolite explains that he doesn't need any leverage to defeat them. He then equips his golem with cannon blasters to finish them off. By then, Lilia has just met up with Cheryl and Marks outside, but she keeps trying to enter the hall despite the soldiers' warnings. After reinforcements show up to help, she runs in with them, so Cheryl and Marks follow her as well. However, they all end up outside again and realize that someone is using transference magic to keep them out of the exam hall. By then, Iolite's golem has completely destroyed the place, but despite taking multiple hits, Vermeil still tries to fight. Unfortunately, Iolite uses the opportunity to capture her and immediately starts bragging about how powerful he is. Upon seeing this, Alto's mind turns red, and after charging up his mana, he obliterates the golem with a single attack. Iolite gets shocked by this and sends his knight, but Alto easily defeats it as well, as he then tries to send Iolite on a one-way trip to heaven. Iolite merges his knight and golem into a more powerful creature that stops Alto in his tracks. Iolite then takes a closer look at him and asks why no one has figured out his true potential. When Alto asks what he plans to do with Vermeil, he explains that her powers will help him accomplish his goal to destroy the world. This causes Alto to get pissed off again, so he shatters the knight's spear with his hands and tries to fight again, but Iolite easily overpowers him. However, this finally causes Vermeil to lose it, so she transforms and tries to fight back, only to end up getting chained like a stray dog. Using a magical key, Iolite locks her mind away and tries to take her, but Alto grabs his leg and says he won't let it happen. Iolite then resets his brain with a kick since he is clearly too delusional to accept his own weakness. When Alto still insists on fighting, Iolite decides to end his pathetic life and says he initially considered sparing him. Just as his golden fires off the beam, Alto's bag lights, and a shield protects him from the blast. Alto then sees a book flying out of his bag and realizes that it's the one Vermeil was sealed in. The next moment, the chick from his dream flies out and introduces herself as Fatima, the Mage of Beginnings and the first person to ever reach the depths of magical knowledge. After she also adds that she sealed Vermeil away. Alto thinks she is also an enemy until she moves towards Vermeil and says her trauma is holding her back. She explains that the only way to save her is to help her accept the past she has been running from. But he has to be ready to stay by her side after learning the truth. After Alto promises to support Vermeil regardless of what she did, Fatima hands him a key to access her memories, but Iolite gets tired of being treated like a background character and decides to attack. However, Fatima tells him to sit tight right before Alto turns the key and gets transported into Vermeil's past. He immediately asks Fatima if it's safe for them to be here, and after explaining that time spent here doesn't change anything in the present, she tells him to worry about helping Vermeil because his mind will also get stuck if he fails. Alto then looks down and sees a little Vermeil running with a flower crown in her hands. She eventually reaches a chapel and places it on a nun's head before happily complimenting how good she looks with it. Just then, 3 others join them for a group hug. So Fatima tells Alto that this was Vermeil's family and the point where she experienced the most happiness despite the fact that they were not blood related. While they both continue watching, Vermeil heads inside for dinner and starts stuffing her face until the food blocks her airways. Her older sister, Mil, then tells her to stop being so greedy with the food. But Vermeil ignores this and thanks her for being such an amazing cook. When she starts bragging about the flower crown she made for the nun, Kate and Lynn get jealous and say they want to make some as well. Much later, the nun fixes Vermeil's bow to hide her horns and explains what she is because Vermeil still doesn't realize that she is not your average Humag girl. The nun further explains how people have always hated and feared demons, but insists that she will always love her even if God is against it. Alto then asks why Vermeil even has to hide her true identity in the first place. So Fatima reminds him that this was over half a millennium ago, in a time when the fear of demons was very much real. The fact that humans had just escaped caveman status didn't help matters as well, because they barely had any understanding of magic or the world around them. Alto still gets confused about how such a peaceful, happy life could go wrong, so Fatima tells him to get ready for the bad part. Much later, some locals learned about Vermeil's true identity when her bow slipped, so they started throwing stones at her and telling her to leave their city. As she tries to protect her head, Mil finally shows up and chases the locals away before checking on Vermeil and wondering why they would do such a thing to her. The next moment, she sees the horn and steps back in shock before asking Vermeil if she is really a demon. With tears in her eyes, Vermeil admits to it and apologizes for lying to her. But Mil suddenly hugs her and promises to keep her safe even if the entire city turns against them. As the days go on, more locals begin to throw stones and hurl insults at them for protecting Vermeil. They also start blaming her for every person who falls sick or dies, and this causes Alto to get pissed because all Vermeil wants is to leave happily with her already poor family. Soon enough, a major plague wipes out most of the locals, and as expected, those who survived march to the chapel with pitchforks and knives to unalive Vermeil. While the nun goes out to talk them down, Mil tells Vermeil to leave them behind and run until she gets to somewhere safe. Left with no other choice, Vermeil accepts and gives them all one last hug before running away. However, while trying to escape the city, she overhears some of the locals planning to attack her family for helping her get away. She also hears their plans to cut her into chunks of flesh when they find her, but despite being terrified, she decides to go turn herself in so everyone else can stay safe. Minutes later, she returns to the chapel and sees them all hanging from a tree while the locals continue raging behind her. Vermeil initially refuses to believe her own eyes, but after getting closer and realizing that they are really gone, she loses control and unleashes her true powers for the very first time. However, instead of just transforming, she completely destroys the entire city. Fatima then explains that this is where her loneliness and reputation as the world's strongest demon started. Exactly 200 years after this, she would ask to be sealed away out of guilt and a belief that she doesn't deserve love anymore. After Fatima asks Alto if he can still love her after this, he flies down and hugs her before saying that he will continue to stay by her side regardless of what she has done. Vermeil then transforms to her current self and says she deserves to be alone forever. But Alto refuses to accept this and promises to always love her. He then reassures her with a kiss and breaks the chains Iolite used to cage her mind. After they return to the present, Iolite is shocked to see that they easily broke the chains and admits that he underestimated them because the chain was made with ancient magic. After summoning his knight to attack them, he says that Vermeil is too dangerous to be left unchecked, which is why he has to use her power to destroy the world before she gets a chance to do it. Alto then refuses to give her up and says he doesn't care if she is good or evil, so long as he gets to clap her cakes and love her whenever he wants. He also tells Iolite that no one sees her for what she really is or the trauma that she has endured. But Iolite gets tired of the sob story and decides to attack. However, Alto unlocks the silver mana and combines his strength with Vermeil's golden mana to destroy the knight. Iolite gets surprised by their power levels and decides to take them out by himself. But after he commends them for lasting this long, Helios walks in through a portal and tells him that it's time to leave. He gets frustrated by this and says he still wants to fight, so she explains the situation outside and tells him that they do not have time for his psychotic antics. He then decides to let Alto and Vermeil take the win, but also promises to face them again soon. As he heads towards the portal, Alto stops him and asks for his real plan, but he refuses to tell them and leaves. The next moment, Alto gets startled by Fatima, who has been standing behind them, to tell him that she will be entrusting Vermeil into his care. He then recites his vows to always protect her while Vermeil blushes. Fatima thanks him and tells Vermeil to also support him. After wishing them the best of luck, she takes off and uses a magical rainbow to disrupt the transference shield Helios used to keep them trapped inside. As the academy finally returns to normal, Alto spots the book Vermeil was sealed in and hands it over to her. So she takes a moment to think and realizes that Fatima intentionally dropped it on Alto's head to bring them together. Just then, Lilia runs in with the others and hugs Alto, causing him to feel happy that the people he cares about didn't hurt. Days later, life returns to normal for everyone except Alto, who is currently working on his swordsmanship with help from Jessica. After she easily disarms him and explains that he has a lot of work to do, Chris shows up and offers to go around with him as well. As soon as he agrees, she unleashes a flurry of brutal combinations and admits that he is better than her at magic before pinning him down with her kitty. She then loads up her fingers in his mouth and says he can never overpower her in strength until he puts some meat on them bones. Minutes later, he thanks them for the lesson and says he will be asking for more in the future. But Jessica gets curious and asks why he is so obsessed with getting strong. Alto then thinks back on the promise he made to Fatima and his love for Vermeil before explaining that he has to get stronger so she will never have to worry about evil people attacking her. This causes Jessica to blush since she has never heard a real man talking about his goals before. But Chris laughs and commends him for being so determined. Later that night, Alto starts the usual makeout session with Vermeil, but this time, he gets aggressive and pushes her back into the bed until she asks for a break. She then tells him that her heart has been skipping multiple beats all day long, so he asks to take a look.
Yeah, boy.
And she pulls out her juicy plots for him to examine. However, she gets shy and asks if he needs to see everything. So he backs up and apologizes before wondering why his freaky demon mommy is suddenly acting embarrassed. After, she spoons him and thanks him for choosing to accept her before explaining that her heart starts racing after he professed his love to her. She then confesses her love again, and they continue the sloppy kisses until morning. After getting ready for school, they head to the council office, and Elena quickly notes that he looks a lot more determined than usual. She then starts by reminding them of all the recent incidents and says that she plans to take serious action to ensure the future safety of every student in the academy. Ryuga initially says that he would have preferred a less direct approach, but he also agrees that they need to do something to make sure the academy is safe again. After both Jessica and Chris agree to it, Elena asks Alto if he is ready for what comes next because they will have to go up against platinum mages and possibly the military as well. Alto then takes a moment to think and says that he is ready to fight the whole world if it means protecting his love with Vermal. Much later, Lilia gets her results from the bronze examination and gets excited because she passed. Shirley also celebrates it and says she didn't expect them to reschedule it after everything that went down. Lilia then tries to tell Alto, but after realizing that they haven't seen him all day, she decides to go look for a certain demon that likes to sneak him away for sloppy time. This time, Vermail takes him to a new spot to smooch, and when he complains about doing it in public, she reminds him of his promise to always love her and drags him onto the open field before pouncing for an even more intense makeout session. If you watch till the end and want to see what the freaky couple gets up to next, comment Demon Lover, and don't forget to turn on post notifications to make sure you never miss any of our videos.